Her voice was quiet but firm. "I didn't take anything," she repeated, her gaze darting across the sea of onlookers. She didn't know whether to plead for help or brace herself against the weight of humiliation pressing down on her chest. The store owner wasn't backing down. His words cut through the air like shards of glass. "You think I don't see you? Empty your bag. Prove it." The silence between each word stretched unbearably long, broken only by her sharp inhale as she tried to steady herself. She could feel her pulse thudding in her ears, every beat a reminder of the nightmare unfolding in real time. Shoppers paused mid-aisle, their carts abandoned, their curiosity overpowering their sense of decency. The man's accusation wasn't just an attack on her character. It was a public spectacle, a cruel theater staged for anyone willing to watch. The whispers started, low and conspiratorial. Did she really take something? She doesn't look like a thief. But the question hung there, unspoken but heavy. Why else would he accuse her? "Check the cameras," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. It was her only defense. Her hands shook as she gestured toward the black domes mounted on the ceiling, their unblinking lenses capturing everything. But the store owner scoffed, his tone laced with condescension. "Oh, we'll check them, but you're not leaving here until I see for myself." And then came the demand that changed everything. "Take off your coat. I want to see what you're hiding underneath." The gasps came immediately, rippling through the store like a wave. Eyes widened, mouths opened, then snapped shut. But no one stepped forward. No one spoke up. The world seemed to tilt. As the woman froze, her fingers tightening on her coat. "I don't have to do that," she said, her voice cracking under the strain. Oh, yes you do," he snarled, "unless you want me to call the cops." The room seemed to hold its breath, the tension thick enough to choke on. For a moment, it seemed as though she might stand her ground. But then, slowly, reluctantly, she reached for the buttons on her coat. Oh, by the way, if stories like these move you, challenge you, or make you think a little differently, this is the place for you. Hit that subscribe button now, and you'll never miss a story that stirs the soul and sparks conversation. Back to the story. The coat slipped from her shoulders, falling to the floor with a dull thud. Her hands fumbled, shaking as she revealed her sweater beneath, her movements jerky and mechanical. The humiliation of it all stung worse than any insult could have. Her heart raced as she searched the crowd, hoping, praying, that someone might say something, anything. But the faces staring back at her were blank. Some were glued to their phones recording. Others turned away entirely, too uncomfortable to meet her eyes. She had never felt so alone. And then, as if her nightmare couldn't deepen, the store owner demanded more. "Take off the sweater too, we're not done here." This time, her body stiffened, her hands refused to move. "I won't," she said, louder now, though her voice still wavered. Damen took a step closer, his finger pointing like a dagger. "If you've got nothing to hide, you'll do it, or I'll have security drag you out of here." That's when it happened. A man in the corner of the store whispered into his phone. Another shopper murmured something under their breath. The murmurs grew louder, uneasy, and charged. Still, no one intervened. And yet, while this cruel spectacle played out, there was one crucial detail Harold, the store owner, didn't know. One truth that would unravel everything he thought he controlled. The woman before him wasn't just any shopper, and she wasn't alone in this fight. Her husband was already on his way. And Harold, he had no idea who he'd just picked a fight with. Lisa wasn't in a rush that afternoon. She had come to the store with a single purpose: to pick out a thoughtful gift for her friend's upcoming birthday. A professional, successful attorney, she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her energy was calm, her smile warm, the kind of person you'd expect to brighten a room without trying. She scanned the shelves, carefully choosing between two fragrances, unaware of the eyes fixed on her from across the store. Harold, the store owner, was watching. His stare was sharp, his expression unreadable. For Harold, it wasn't about the perfume bottles or the way Lisa moved through the store. It was about something else entirely. Just as Lisa reached for her receipt, Harold appeared, his tone abrupt and accusing. "Ma'am, I need to see your bag," he said, his hand already hovering over the counter as if preparing to grab it himself. Lisa blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" she replied, her polite demeanor unchanged but her brow furrowing slightly. "Don't play dumb," Harold snapped. "I saw you near the jewelry aisle. Something tells me you didn't pay for everything in that bag." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and sudden, like a storm cloud blocking out the sun. Lisa's confusion turned to disbelief. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice still steady, though a flicker of anger crossed her face. Harold folded his arms, his stance rigid. "Serious as a heart attack. Either you show me what you've got, or I'm calling the police." It wasn't just the accusation that stung. It was the way he made a spectacle of it. Harold didn't lower his voice or take her aside. No, he wanted everyone to hear. Lisa held her ground, her chin lifting slightly as she responded. "I've nothing to hide. You're welcome to check your cameras, but I'm not emptying my bag just because you say so." Harold wasn't interested in her dignity. He leaned in, his voice loud enough to echo through the aisles. "You think the cameras can see what you're hiding under your clothes? Don't play games with me, lady." The crowd grew larger. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others whispered among themselves, speculating. Lisa's hands trembled as she gripped her bag tighter. "I'm not going to let you humiliate me like this," she said, though her voice cracked under the strain. But Harold wasn't finished. He raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. "Then I guess we're calling the police," he said smugly. "Or you can prove to everyone here you're not a thief." And that's when it happened. The moment Lisa would never forget. The moment no one in that store would forget. Harold pointed at her coat. "Take it off, let's see what you're hiding." Gasps filled the room. Lisa froze, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of every eye in the room, the judgment, the curiosity. Her voice was barely a whisper now. "This is harassment." But Harold didn't flinch. "Call it whatever you want," he said. "You're not leaving until I'm satisfied." Cornered, outnumbered, and stripped of her options, Lisa did the unthinkable. She began unbuttoning her coat. The sound of each button sliding through its hole was deafening in the silence of the store. The coat dropped to the floor. Lisa stood there, exposed, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as if she could shield herself from the humiliation. She glanced at the crowd, searching for a friendly face, an ally, someone who would step forward and say, "This is wrong." But no one moved. For Harold, it wasn't enough. He demanded more. "The sweater too," he barked. "I'm not playing games." The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. Lisa's tears welled up, her dignity crumbling with every second that passed. But just when she thought she couldn't endure another moment, a voice broke through the tension. "That's enough." The crowd turned as one, their eyes landing on a tall man in a crisp suit, his face set like stone. Lisa's eyes widened as recognition washed over her. Her husband had arrived. Lisa sat alone in her car, the humiliation still fresh, her heart racing. She stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror, her face a mix of shock and despair. With shaking hands, she dialed the one person she'd trusted to make this right. "Marcus," she began, her voice breaking, "you won't believe what just happened." On the other end of the line, Marcus listened intently. His voice was calm but firm. "Take a deep breath," he said. "Tell me everything." And she did. Every detail of Harold's accusations, the public humiliation, and the eyes of the strangers who stood by and watched. As she spoke, Marcus's jaw tightened. What Harold didn't know, and what Lisa's voice hinted at with each word, was that Marcus wasn't just her husband. He was one of the most respected civil rights attorneys in the state, a man with a history of dismantling racial injustices brick by brick. Marcus didn't waste a moment. Within hours, he had contacted local activists and civil rights organizations. He wasn't just seeking justice for Lisa. He was rallying a movement. Word spread fast. Videos taken by shoppers during the incident began circulating on social media. The footage was raw and damning. It showed Harold's harsh demands, Lisa's visible distress, and the silence of the onlookers. Outrage poured in from across the community and beyond. Comments flooded in. "This is disgusting. How is this still happening in 2024? She deserves justice." It wasn't just online anger. Protesters gathered outside the store the next day, holding signs that read, "Justice for Lisa" and "End racial profiling." The store's reputation was crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. While the community rallied, Marcus got to work. He wasn't just looking for an apology, he wanted accountability. He filed a lawsuit against Harold and the store, citing racial discrimination, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit didn't just seek damages for Lisa's trauma. It demanded a formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing, mandatory sensitivity training for the store's employees, and a commitment to policy changes to prevent future incidents. "This isn't just about my wife," Marcus told reporters at a press conference. "This is about every person who has ever been judged, humiliated, or wrongfully accused because of the color of their skin." The legal battle had begun. Marcus's team gathered evidence. Videos from shoppers. Witness statements from those who saw the incident unfold. Harold's history of customer complaints, which painted a damning picture of repeated racial bias. Lisa had been humiliated, yes, but now, with Marcus at her side and a growing wave of support behind them, she was ready to stand tall again. What Harold thought would be a moment of unchecked power was becoming a reckoning, a fight not just for Lisa, but for an entire community. The story had already gone viral, but now it was gaining national attention. Major media outlets picked it up, showing the video of Harold's actions alongside headlines like "racial profiling" or "something worse." Lisa's interviews were raw and heartfelt. She recounted the humiliation, the fear, and the overwhelming support she had received since. "When he told me to strip," Lisa said, her voice steady but her hands fidgeting, "it wasn't just about proving my innocence. It was about taking away my dignity in front of everyone." As the story spread, more people came forward. Former employees and customers shared their own encounters with Harold's store, painting a chilling picture of discriminatory behavior that had gone unchecked for years. Harold wasn't just facing one lawsuit. He was now at the center of a community reckoning. The trial was a spectacle. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but the public followed every update with rapt attention. Marcus was a force to be reckoned with in the courtroom. "What happened to my client," Marcus began during his opening statement, "wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of unchecked prejudice, manifesting in the most dehumanizing way." Over the course of the trial, Marcus presented irrefutable evidence. The video footage shows Harold's aggressive behavior. Testimonies from witnesses, including shoppers who described the horror they felt watching Lisa's humiliation. Records of prior complaints against Harold's store, revealing a disturbing pattern of racial profiling. Harold's lawyer tried to argue that he had acted in good faith, claiming he was only trying to protect his business. But Marcus was ready for that defense. "Protecting your business does not give you the right to destroy someone's dignity," Marcus countered. Lisa was presumed guilty, not because of what she did, but because of who she is. That is unacceptable. The turning point came when Marcus introduced testimony from a former employee. The witness, a young man named Caleb, described how Harold had instructed staff to keep a closer eye on black customers, often referring to them with offensive stereotypes. The courtroom was silent as Caleb spoke. Harold avoided eye contact, his face betraying the cracks in his defense. After days of tense deliberations, the jury returned with a unanimous decision. The court ruled in Lisa's favor, ordering Harold to pay significant damages for emotional distress and defamation. But the punishment didn't stop there. The judge mandated that Harold and his staff undergo sensitivity training and implement strict anti-discrimination policies in the store. The public response was swift. Community members organized boycotts of Harold's store, urging others to shop elsewhere. Within weeks, sales plummeted. Harold's reputation, once untarnished in the small town, was now in ruins. "This isn't just a victory for me," Lisa said during a press conference after the verdict. "This is a message to everyone who has ever felt powerless. You can fight back, and you can win." Marcus stood beside her, his face filled with pride. The fight had been grueling, but justice had been served. This wasn't just about one woman's fight. It was a catalyst for change. Harold learned the hard way that actions have consequences, and Lisa's courage inspired a movement that would ripple far beyond the walls of that store. In the aftermath of the trial, Lisa and Marcus took a moment to reflect on the whirlwind they had endured. What started as a trip to buy a gift had transformed into a battle for justice, one that neither of them had asked for but felt compelled to see through. "At first, I just wanted to forget it," Lisa admitted. "The embarrassment, the pain, it was too much. But then Marcus reminded me that staying silent wouldn't just hurt me. It would allow others to suffer the same way." Marcus, calm but firm, added, "This was never just about us. It was about drawing a line in the sand and saying, 'This stops here.'" Their words weren't just for themselves. They were for everyone watching, everyone who had ever felt small in the face of injustice. They wanted people to know it was possible to fight back, no matter how overwhelming the odds might seem. The fallout from the incident didn't just impact Harold. It sparked a reckoning across the entire community. Activists and local leaders used the momentum to push for broader changes, including training programs for businesses and public discussions about racial bias. Lisa became a reluctant but powerful voice in this movement. While she initially shied away from the spotlight, the overwhelming support she received encouraged her to step up. She partnered with advocacy groups to share her story, using it as a tool to educate and inspire. "What happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone," Lisa said during a community forum. "But if my experience can lead to change, then it wasn't all for nothing." Even those who had once patronized Harold's store began to see the broader implications of their choices. The boycotts were not just about punishing Harold, but about demanding accountability and ensuring a safer, more equitable environment for everyone. This story isn't just about Lisa or Marcus, it's about all of us. It's a reminder that when injustice rears its head, we have the power to confront it. Change doesn't come easy, but it starts with brave individuals willing to stand up and say, "Enough is enough." Lisa's courage, Marcus's determination, and the community's solidarity showed what's possible when people unite against prejudice. This isn't the end. It's a beginning, a new chapter for a town determined to do better, and for a family whose strength inspired a movement. If stories like this resonate with you, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Let's keep these conversations alive and ensure that voices like Lisa's are never silenced. And remember, this is your space for stories that challenge the status quo, inspire change, and spark conversation. Hit that subscribe button and join us for more stories that matter.